Welcome to episode 2 of series 2 of the Kyero Pro Podcast. In this series, we're looking at AI and what it means for our businesses in real estate, particularly in Spain. And we're joined by two great guests, Jaimie Beers and Lorraine De Marco. And as ever, Alfredo is here to pick up the slack and keep me in check. Today, we're starting from the premise that the AI Genie is well and truly out the bottle. Whether we like it or not, AI is here. And it's difficult to ignore, probably not prudent to ignore, but it feels like the early 90s of the internet boom. We kind of know this thing's coming, but we don't know what really to make of it. We don't know where it's strong, where it's weak, where we should be exercising caution. So the question really is, how do we stop the panic? How do we field all these calls we get from people trying to flog us something that's got AI labeled on it, but also not miss out, not bury our heads in the sand and go, do you know what? I've been doing this for 20 years. I'll just carry on the way I was doing it. So our guests today are here to help us answer those questions. And I'll introduce each of them now. But I'm Martin Dell, in case you've not watched this before and you wonder who this guy is. I'm one of the founders of Kyero, property portal that's been running for 25 years almost in Spain. Alfredo, please introduce yourself.
I'm Alfredo Bloy-Dawson. I'm architect consultant based here in the Costa del Sol. I've been doing this since 2012.
Cool. Thanks. Lorraine, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, so I am Lorraine De Marco. I'm a director at Hilton International Real Estate, and I have been living and working in Spain for 40 years.
Cool. Thank you. And finally, Jaimie, how about you?
My name is Jaimie Beers. I've been in estate agency and real estate since 2003, so almost 23, coming up 24 years. Most of that time is spent in London, but the last 5 years have been on the Costa del Sol. And over the last 2 years, I've been working with PropTech, two different sort of sides of it, with AI, and still involved in real estate as well. So my background is real estate, but for the last few years, I've been also involved in PropTech with a sort of focus on AI.
Cool, thank you. I think we've got the right people in the room. That's always a good start. Before we dive into this episode, Alfredo, what was your takeaway, your sort of summary of episode 1?
My summary would be, as the title suggested, I thought it was the best title ever, our book, Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? I think that was the takeaway, is that there's certain things that as leaders have to consider about the people that they're applying this to, and the sort of hack to ask anybody internally or externally that are suggesting that we should do this because it's available. It doesn't, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. And you should always ask, will this actually make a difference? Which was the title of the book, Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? I think that was certainly my takeaway.
Cool, thank you. And I think it's fair to say that around the table here, we've got different angles and different perspectives on AI and where it's useful. Alfredo and I guess we're AI curious, but confused. Jaimie, you're probably a bit more pro AI, but I know you've got some case studies that we can talk about later about where it's been good and where it's not been so useful. And Lorraine, you've been vocal recently on LinkedIn saying, stop calling me about your AI app. So a variety of opinions. Perhaps we could start with you, Lorraine, and if you could tell us what prompted you to take to LinkedIn with your, I won't call it rant. A tirade, it was a minor rant.
No, it certainly was a rant. Like yourself and Alfredo, I am AI curious. I do believe that we do have to evolve and we have to pick tools up and use them. However, there comes a time, and your first line should always be a human line. When clients are looking, as I was saying earlier, when clients are looking at spending hundreds of thousands of euros or multiple millions, they want to know that they're speaking with a person. They want to know that somebody's listening to them. And what actually prompted that rant was every single day I was getting calls, I was getting emails, I was getting text messages. Our AI system can take over your calls. And I'm just not convinced that a human being wants to speak with a robot. And we all know when we get an AI call, you hear it in the voice, you hear it in the click. And I've got quite a large insurance portfolio, where, I've got multiple properties, cars, health, life insurance. And one of my rental properties, we actually had a leak coming from upstairs. I could not speak with a human. I just couldn't. I could not get whatever number I called, whatever email I emailed. There was no human. It was all AI. In the end, I just said, listen, I'm cancelling all my insurances with you. And they said, look, we'll give you your insurance for free. But I'm saying, no, it's really, really important to me that I need to speak with a human. So there's ways that, we can certainly bring AI in. There's certainly mundane, boring tasks that we can use AI for. But to actually put an AI system in as your first line, not sure it works. Not sure it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, interesting. I've certainly been on the receiving end of AI calls, and they said they don't work for me. But what I was hearing you say there was that frustration of not being able to speak with a person is a really important thing. And I think we've all been involved in chat rooms where you're going, human being, customer service assistant, look, give me a human being. What is it you think that we want from that human contact that the AI can't give us right now?
I think we want to be understood. I think we want to feel that we've been listened to, and it's the way a human to a machine is not the same connection as a human to human. And there's going to be certain stages, there's going to be certain parts of our business that, AI will dominate it, and AI will take a lot of the mundane tasks off us. But when it comes to a human speaking with a human, it's the emotion. It's the emotional connection. Just having somebody say, listen, I hear what you're saying, I understand what you're saying, and here's what I'm going to do to help you. You just don't quite get that from a bot or a AI system.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think what I'm taking away from that is the need to be heard and understood, and know that there's a person on the other side that even if they can't help us, even if they can't do what we want, they've understood what we want.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, there could be a degree of empathy also missing from the equation, couldn't there, with a human to bot sort of conversation? Where people have fears and they have concerns and they have, hopes and dreams, and you might just want that, almost like you have with a friend, where you just want someone that you believe has your back and is going to be your point of contact throughout, and that you can build a relationship with. And maybe those are those intangibles that Lorraine's talking about that goes beyond simply answering your questions.
I think so, and particularly with this kind of a purchase, it's an infrequent, high-value purchase. Why risk being misunderstood or not understood at all? Jaimie, you're coming at the whole AI question from a completely different angle, and if I've understood correctly, you're saying that agents are obsessed with how they're using AI when they should be concerned about how buyers are using AI. Have I framed that correctly?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I agree with Lorraine that, having worked in property for as long as we have, when you get people approaching you, trying to solve problems that don't actually exist, because the agents in Spain don't suffer from the fact of they've not got enough time to speak to their clients. That's not the problem, is it? And when you have, I think what happens sometimes is that they think, right, these guys who are creating this technology, who don't know our industry, never worked in our industry, never run a business like ours, they think, right, okay, we've got this new thing here. Who can we sell it to that won't know about it? Let's get on to the real estate agents. And, they approach you, like you said, Lorraine, with a problem that you don't have. It's not the fact that we just don't have enough time to speak to our clients. And what happens is that, straight away they're solving a problem that you don't have. And you see the issues with their approach straight away, because when your guys, whether it's you, Lorraine, or your staff, are talking and registering clients, at the same time, they're building that rapport, they're selling the business, they're also put, like Alfredo says, empathizing and getting that person on board. And we unfortunately don't work in a marketplace where we can afford to have a barrier between us and our clients. You know, if we had a product that only we had and there was huge demand that only we could supply, then maybe we could afford to be saying, right, you know what, we're going to put this imperfect barrier between us and our clients, but we're the only person that's got the properties. They have to come through us, so they have to deal with it. Like the insurance company, you know, if you want to make a claim, they can route you through the channel you've got to go through. And no matter how laborious it is, the amount of people that change insurance companies because we've already got it is low. But in real estate, if we don't supply the service, there's plenty of other people that will, right? So removing the key function, which is getting your best agents speaking to your buyers, that's not a solve. It's not like an efficiency. That's, you know, you're throwing your business away by doing that, because, you know, if you're not selling your business and you're not building that rapport with the buyer, then, you know, it's a complete waste of your time. So I agree. And I think that AI has also caused the problem of mass outreach. So I'm sure all of us are getting constant emails in our inboxes, which, like, you know, it's mass outreach has become, there's different systems, different AI systems. Apollo is one that's really popular, where they can source the prospects, and it's like, you know, automized prospecting. And you can, I know an Apollo email and I get it straight away, you know, and you get this chain of them in your inbox from people. And I think that it's caused an issue on lots of platforms as well, like LinkedIn and stuff like that, where the content sort of, you know, the outreach and content proliferation has been huge, which has been caused by AI. So it is frustrating when you're a business owner, and especially when people are contacting you to solve a problem you don't have, it's highly frustrating. But for me, what I think is that, you know, when I got involved in AI, and I'm not an AI evangelist at all, you know, there are people out there that are AI evangelists and they think AI is going to solve everything. And I'm not in that boat at all. But the way I looked at it was, when I first started in property, you had things like The Loot and newspapers that we would still advertise in. And the portals were quite new at that stage. And I saw how it changed everything, because it changed consumer behavior. People no longer went to the newspapers or things like The Loot looking for properties. It changed the way consumers behaved, which then meant we all had to change the way that we went about our business, because our consumers were looking, you know, our potential clients were looking for us in different ways and in different places. And when AI came out, you know, I had the same kind of, you know, there's things about it which are pretty scary, you know, when you see these things of like people that look really real talking on sort of, you know, like a platform, you think, oh my God, I can't believe that's AI. You know, it's quite frightening, isn't it? But I still have those apprehensions. But when I looked at it, I thought, you know what, this is going to change everything the way the internet did, because it's a new technology. You know, AI is just, there's many forms of it, but it's just a new technology, right? So I thought it's going to change the way people, consumers, behave. It's got the potential to change the way we need to operate. So whether I like it or not, I can't stop it. I have to get on board with it, you know, so better to understand it and make sure that I'm ahead of the curve with it rather than sort of a victim of it, basically. So that's my sort of approach to has been to AI is that. And I definitely started with on the basis of how could it potentially change the way our potential clients look for us or find the agents they want to use, because that's something we don't have a choice in. You know, whether we want to adopt AI or not, that's a personal thing as an agent, it's a personal thing as a business. The business can choose whether it uses it internally or not. But if our clients change the way they behave, that's an out there problem, and that's something we must adapt to and change to. So I think that most agents at the moment think first ourselves because it's easier, you know, that's kind of like how are we going to use it is the first thought. But actually the most important thing is, what if it changes how our customers behave or our potential customers behave? And what if it means that the places that we were showing up in before, we need to show up in different places now?
And thank you. That's interesting. And are you seeing any signs of how that behavior is changing, particularly with international buyers?
Yeah, I think that the adoption of agentic, which is, you know, I hate using these sort of acronyms and all these sort of codes. I think that's part of the problem, is that there's so many sort of these buzzwords floating around, and, you know, people are throwing out AEO, GEO, and MO, and all this sort of stuff. And basically, it just means that people, if you are dependent on search for a lot of your new business, you know, so whether it be Google, but search engine driven finding you, then look, there's a potential new way people might be finding you, and it's using an AI agent, so you need to be aware of it. And I think the difference mainly comes from they're getting different kinds of answers, and the answers are being given in different kinds of form and formats. So in the West, we're a bit behind with the use of agents to actually do jobs for us. In China, they're way ahead, both governmentally and in the public. A lot of the cities are run by AI agents, a lot of the kind of processes and stuff like that. It's really interesting that they're much more reliant, and a lot more of the general public are using it for booking appointments and kind of their day-to-day life than what we're doing at the moment. But once people become more dependent on their agents, and you get to know because I'm sure you guys all probably use AI on a regular basis, and you kind of get a feeling that you get in tune with your model, the one that you're using, be it Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. And when you start asking it questions, you start to trust the answers, that it gives you back. And it's kind of, if you think of a search engine as a list of potential answers, whereas an AI agent will give you an actual answer, and it will also give you a reasoning behind the answer. So if you think of it on a sort of human level, if one of your friends asked you to give you a list of agents in Marbella, you could pretty easily give them a list kind of thing. And it might take you 10 minutes to give them a list, right? Top of my head, I know the top 5 guys are these guys, right? So I'll give them this list. But if your friend asks you to recommend the best, or the one who sold the most houses in this urbanization where they live, that would be a bit difficult. You'd have to do a bit of research, and you'd have to give a bit of reasoning behind it. And I think that's part of the reason why the process and experience is a bit different, that they're giving actual answers, and almost, I think it's probably the closest to a personal recommendation rather than just a list of potential answers. You go and make your own mind up. And I think is what is quite different, and what agents need to be aware of if they're relying on search, or they have previously relied on search for a lot of their new business leads.
Wow, interesting. Well, there's a lot there to unpack, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that a bit later. But a few things you said that I really resonated with was the problem of AI being touted as the solution to everything, and solving problems that agents don't have necessarily. But on the flip side of that, people are getting more accustomed to wanting answers rather than a list of possible answers. Well, yeah, I mean, I know from my point of view, I rarely use Google now unless I'm shopping. Like it's got a great shopping search, but if I want, hey, how do I configure this thing, or what do? I just ask one of the bots.
I think the research that it does and the detail that it brings back, I think people are getting pretty used to the fact it's really efficient at doing it. And part of the scary part of it for agents and marketing, if you're on the marketing side of things, is that it's not as easy as to predict how it comes up with these answers. And that's part of the problem with SEO, is kind of not, it's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do, but the parameters are more well known because we've been dealing with it for a long time. But obviously this is new. And because rather than just being part of a list, you're all of a sudden going to be part of are you either going to be the answer or not, is a scarier place to be, because you might not even appear at all, basically.
Sure. Let's open this up a little bit, all of us, and think about the scenario where our potential buyer, our potential client, is maybe using one of the 3 big ones to, actually, I've never met anybody using Grok other than to criticize it. Anyway, they're using one of the 3 big ones to maybe shortlist properties or find the right area that they think might suit them. So they're involved with AI in some ways before they even get in touch with us as agents. What does the agent need to do in that scenario when our clients are using AI before they even get in touch with us?
We have had instances in the past 12 months where a client has found us by using an AI search. And for me, it's still in its infancy in terms of clients looking for us using ChatGPT or similar or other models. I feel that they're still, even when they're using the AI to find us, they still want to make the human connection. Even when I've been speaking with them, they said, look, we put into ChatGPT what we were looking for, who should we speak to? You came up, we want to speak with you. So yes, they may be using it to search or to narrow down locations, but I think once they've gone past that, they're still coming back to the human connection.
Right. So it's not enough for them to go, well, the AI said, therefore it must be true. They're kind of verifying, checking you out as well.
Yeah. And I feel that what people are really looking for is the human connection, and as much as you can get information from ChatGPT and whatever other sources you use, when it comes down to, okay, I'm going to be looking to be spending X amount of money, is this location right for me? ChatGPT says that, it's 20 minutes from Malaga Airport. ChatGPT says that I'm a 15-minute walk to the beach. ChatGPT says that it's got, shops, supermarkets, everything else about it. Yeah, but did ChatGPT also tell you that, by the way, there's a sewage work behind it, or there's a pig farm behind it, or when the farmer sprays his field, it's not a pleasant experience for you? Did ChatGPT also tell you that there's a school, so that during 9 a.m. in the morning or 2 p.m. in the afternoon, or when they're playing basketball, and I think that's where we're still evolving with the AI, and that's where I still feel that clients appreciate a human honesty, because as you were saying, Jaimie, when you're using whatever machine you're using, sometimes you kind of have to think, wait a minute, are you telling me that because that's what you think that I want to know? Or that's what I want to hear, and quite often you have to kind of go back and say, no, wait a minute, that's not right. And they'll say, oh, so sorry, I made a mistake, and like, no, come on, look. So are we training the machine to give us the answers that we want to hear and not the full picture?
The models definitely, they do become biased towards your views. So, if you mention your business, for instance, or, it knows you work there, and it does. So you can actually go into your settings, and tell it not to do this, or you can use a non-bias, which is almost like an incognito window, when you use something where it's not got any cached information on you, basically. But as part of the memory, it does become biased, and there is a big danger in that. And I think that I agree with you 100% that I don't think we'll ever get away from the sort of informal social contract that's formed when we're dealing with a human. When we're dealing with an agent, and we get to know that person, what humans are really good at judging is, do I like this person? Can I trust this person? Therefore, the information they give me and the properties they show me, I'm going to be more biased to think that they are good options for me. And we also feel that when we're dealing with a human, there's a point of recourse. Like, look, this guy lives locally, they're experienced here. Like, Lorraine, you've been on the coast for 40 years. It's highly unlikely that you're going to pack up tomorrow after you've sold me a house and leave. And if I've got problems, Lorraine's not going to be there for me, or your business isn't going to be there for me. And that social contract to us means a lot, and I think that's why agents are, that value in the agents is amazing, because they do that all within that one call. When they're registering someone, an agent builds that rapport and builds that trust, and then over the viewings, and that's a big part of what people buy, not just the bricks and mortar. They're buying into the business and into the people that they're dealing with. And I think that the best way for AI to work is to surface as many of those situations for us as possible, to try and get us into as many of those things. But I definitely agree with you. It'd be a big mistake to try and channel things away from human conversations and away from human contact, because you'll lose that feeling. And I think as far as showing up on these answers is concerned, I think that agents just need to be aware that what their digital footprint is at the moment is what these models are going to base their judgment on. So when they're asked the question, who is the best at this? Who sells the most like this? And, who should I use to sell this? Who is the best agent in this? It can just look at what's out there on us. and they value slightly different things higher than the way the search engines work, which was off authority scores and backlinks and stuff like that. They look for different kinds of data, and they use that data to recommend. So I think for the agents, the job is to try and ensure that they keep getting involved in as many of these conversations as possible. But to do that, you might have to try and make sure your digital footprint is as big and useful as possible to what's going to be recommending you, because it can only see what you've got out there. If you are the best agent, but from a digital perspective, it doesn't look like that, then the likelihood is you won't get recommended, somebody else will, even though you're the best suited person for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. That's sort of touching on the marketing angle. I'm sure you've got an opinion on that side of it, Alfredo.
For sure. I mean, where do I start?
Number one.
I mean, marketing, real estate marketing generally is pretty bad. So if you're gonna do bad real estate marketing, and it's gonna cost you €750 a month for an agency to do bad marketing for you, my view on that is you might as well spend $20 a month and get bad marketing. So on that basis, I'm not advocating bad marketing. That's it. I think the key word here really is either enhanced or enabled is the term I keep coming back to. So I'd want, if I was an estate agency going into, say, next year, I'd be wanting to deal with a marketing agency that's AI enabled. I would want to be dealing with a SEO agency, if that's what I had, that was SEO AI enabled, a consultant that also knows about AI, so that I don't have the issue that Jaimie's talking about, because that is the danger, isn't it? The danger, I'm the customer. Putting myself in the agent's point of view, I'm the customer. My job is to have my mind open to this, but now I still need to trust people. So I need my supplier of services, marketing, video content, whatever, social media, all the rest of it, to at least have the peace of mind that they know what I should be adopting. Because I think that's the most natural place where you're going to ask, isn't it? I had a case talking to somebody last week that just binned their marketing agency $2,000 a month because they figured out how to do what the agency was doing themselves using AI. So that's a direct reason why that marketing should be basically being upfront about, look, we can now do 100 times the work that we used to be able to do by using AI. We're AI enabled. So you're going to get 10x the productivity for the same money, or it's going to be 10 times cheaper. But also, the stuff that we're doing is it's not future proof, but at least it's current. You see what I mean? So I think from a marketing point of view, you kind of want to know, and marketing touches many things. And what you want to know, are the people that you're dealing with got up to date, at least with as up to date as they can be. And I think the other thing with marketing I will say is that we tend to notice bad marketing more than we notice good marketing, and AI is the funniest example of that. I mean, some of those AI generated videos of what looks essentially like a stripper in Puerto Buenos saying, "Buy your property with us." Yeah, that's an example of how not to do it, right? And there's plenty of those right now, and they kind of give you that feel, that ick of like, I don't want to do that. So I think to answer your actual question as clearly as I can, I think the thing is that you have to have your agents need to have their eyes open. They have to be open-minded, but they don't need to be first. They don't need to be first. They just need to be open to it and maybe work with companies that are starting to open their minds to it too. Then I think it's a safe place to be. You don't need to be the first to do all your videos with an AI generation using the latest, AI generator video. But as you start to see these happening and find out that these are being done at a fraction of the cost, if that is the case even, and better, then adopt it. So it's more of an open-mindedness, I think, with the marketing than it is, you got to be on it. I think that currently there is, in marketing at least, it's probably more danger of using it too soon than there is of using it too late in marketing. And by marketing,
Really
I mean branding, social media, that kind of stuff. That said, the final thing on that is, so you have different elements of the marketing. One of them is maybe the establishing yourself as an authority, personal brand, all that sort of stuff. One of the things that's already I'm noticing changing is, until about 2 years ago, the work, say you were doing a market report as an agency, the work of producing the market report was the trust. the fact that you got that information. Now I meaning anyone, can take Panorama's market report, and I'm seeing it, to be fair, Panorama's market report, and sticking it through AI, producing their own one in 10 minutes, 48 pages of information, probably accurate, mostly. And therefore, the differentiating factor now and going forward is whose name's on the report. And that instinctively, as someone that reads reports like I do, shadow that I am, I won't read them because I don't have trust in that they know enough to tell me something I don't already know, but I know that Chris Clover at Panorama does know. So it's gone from the report being the thing to the person's name on the report being the thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is the trust in the brand, in the business, needs to be there to add credibility to the AI words, not the other way around.
Exactly. I think without going into a big mad tangent about it, I think this sort of thing we hear about personal brand that until about a year ago was a little bit cheesy, to be fair. I think that has more value for this purpose going forward. That Lorraine is who I trust, not the report. But if Lorraine's name's on the report, then I'll read the report because I trust Lorraine. So yeah, I think, ironically, that the cheesy personal brand thing, which was Instagram stuff, I think that has more value going forward and right now already. You know, in my case, if I provide a stat, it's not the same as if Billy No Man provides a stat. Just because I'm known to produce stats, it's probably accurate. That kind of thing.
I think
Gotcha.
when producing content is kind of like unlimited, the ability to do it, then it comes down to the differentiating factor, just like Alfredo's saying, is then who's it coming from? And the thing they can't replicate is you. They can't replicate your history. They can't replicate your years in the game and stuff like that. So I think it adds a lot to your to the actual person that's behind it. Like Alfredo's saying, is very, very true. And the strange thing with this technology is that previous technology releases was kind of like a trickle-down effect. So that the biggest businesses and the most sophisticated businesses with the most money got access to the technology first. And they had the best technology before everybody else did. And then generally then it was then commoditized, and then it dripped down to the mid-level businesses and then the small level businesses. Whereas this time, because it's been done like it started on an open source kind of front, everybody's got access to it. The same models, so the biggest businesses can use this, the smallest businesses can use basically the same tech and same sophistication as the biggest ones. So then the thing comes down to is execution, because everybody's got it. So it's almost like kind of everyone's got the most high-powered machines, but it's how you actually use that. And as you're saying, Alfredo, it's whoever executes on these things better with the most credibility that will win, because everybody's got this tech that allows them to do reports and blogs and, sophisticated emails and stuff like that.
There's also, as Alfredo says, as you've said, Jaimie, it's very new at the minute in our industry. And there's a phrase, chasing the red dress. And are we all doing it because it's new and we all want to, we want to be the AI guys? And listen, let's go back to the baseline. As a real estate agent operating on the Costa del Sol, the Costa Blanca South and the Mar Menor areas, my job is to find my clients best property in the best location at the best price. So yes, we can all be running around, learning about AI and how to do it and how to bring it into our business. But is that taken away from our core function, which is to help our clients? There's only so many hours in the day, and sometimes I think we need to realize where our skill is as real estate agents and what our value is to our clients. And it's keeping up with the market. It's understanding new products. It's keeping up to date with legals, with any new laws that are coming into place. It's keeping up to date with any changes in mortgage rulings. So if AI can help us to do that, so for example, sometimes in the morning, there's 20 news articles come in. I don't have time to read them all. I'll run them through an AI. Okay, what do I need to take away from this today? What's going to help me to help my clients? So, at the end of the day, we're all born with gut reaction. And as you were saying, it's the gut reaction will tell you, yes, I've connected with the right person. Yes, that person's giving me the correct information. Yes, I can trust this person. And if we use the AI machines to help us maintain our information up to date, there's nothing worse than you put out a bit of information and then the next day it's something else is coming, like with the rental laws at the minute in Spain. It's so, we can use AI to keep up with that, but we need to be very aware as how is that helping our clients? What benefit is that providing to our clients?
Let me try and summarize this particular section. I love that phrase, Lorraine, chasing the red dress. I have a shiny thing problem myself, so I totally get that. And also I like the idea of asking the question, how does this help me really add value to my client? What is my value? Is my value add? And if it's just raw data, then AI can do that. I need to add value on top of that. And something you said way back at the beginning of this section, the client use of AI is quite at an early stage. I think the stats that I've read are 95% of people using AI, and that's not everybody, are just using it as casual chat. And less than 5% are actually paying for it, which is kind of an indication of whether they're taking it seriously. So I agree with you on that one. And then we sort of veered into marketing, Alfredo, where you talked about how as business owners we should prefer suppliers that are AI enabled or AI savvy, but also recognize we don't need to be first. And we need to be really asking ourselves the question, will it make our business go faster?
It's talking about AI and the way we're talking about it is like talking about the internet and having a whole podcast about is the internet a good idea or not back in 96, say, or 98, right? The conversations we have today are, is social media, for example, a good thing or a bad thing for kids, right? Not the internet that enables the social media. So I think very quickly it's going to be that. The things that AI produces will then be the conversation is good, bad, or average, whether it be follow-ups, whether it be marketing, whether it be generation of content, whether it be a whole bunch of other things. I think we kind of have to look ahead a little bit and say, we're talking about something that is quite scary because there's a lot of noise about it. This is a lot more scary than what happened with the dot-com boom 95, 2001, because there was no social media then to make us feel like the world's going to explode. So we heard about it in the news, maybe someone that we know. Now we are getting bombarded with this, that all the jobs in the world are going to go in 3 years' time. We're going to be basically plugged into our laptops and dead and whatever. It's just frightening. It is quite frightening. And the fear of missing out element is more than ever. The more I look into the AI conversation to help towards this podcast, the more anxious I become at how broad and big the conversation goes, because it touches everything. So the only way I can think of it really in terms of what the conversation we're having today about the AI genie is out of the bottle, is the internet is out of the bottle. And we didn't know then where it would be used. There were many use cases that we were trying to do with the internet was just stupid. And in 1998, there was no Facebook, there was no MySpace, there was no LinkedIn, that stuff didn't exist. We had no podcast in those days about what do we feel about social media. You see, so we were having a whole podcast series just saying, is the internet going to be a problem or not? It would be similar to the kind of thing we're trying to tackle right now. So the only thing we can do, I think, is try and take the pieces out of it of how we are seeing what we know now, how we're seeing it be applied, and what the foreseeable dangers are.
So, as Alfredo said, talking about AI is like talking about the internet. It's just the new plumbing. And if an agent's listening to this and going, well, that's great, but where do I start? What do I do today? What would you suggest to them, Lorraine? What's your sort of stake in the ground here?
My stake in the ground with this is be aware of what's happening. Do keep up to date with trends. However, don't feel pressured into buying systems, putting things in place that are going to detract from the human element. Use it to take away the boring tasks, the things that we really don't like doing, but don't use it to take out the human connection.
Cool, thank you. How about you, Jaimie?
I would say that don't be scared off by the silly acronyms and the buzzwords that are being thrown around, and especially the kind of party tricks that people are using it for. AI is just a new form of technology and a new way of kind of powering our businesses and search. And it is going to, like Alfredo said, it's going to touch a lot of things. So I think the importance is to be in the race and be aware of it. You don't need to be leading it, but you definitely need to know what's happening with it and what's going on with it. I would definitely warn against dealing with anybody who is trying to sell you a product which has no history of results, and someone who's never had any history in the real estate kind of sphere, because it's highly likely that they completely misunderstand the problems that they think that they're solving. And I would say that make sure that you stick with something which is going to be which makes sense and is sensible. And also there's laws that we need to be aware of, which are that Spanish law. There's also Spanish law and EU law, which means that you have to be the people, if someone's dealing with an AI system, they have to be made aware that they're dealing with an AI system, unless it was obvious that they were, but if it's not obvious, you have to make people aware at the outset. And then the other thing I would say is that handling people's data is another thing that is legally a big sort of a burden on the agent. So, if you're going to be dealing with a third-party company who is offering you services, make sure that they understand the industry and that they've got a proven product, and also make sure that you're safe as a business from the kind of legal AI side, and also the data protection and how you're using people's data, storing people's data, and what you're doing with it. You have to have reasonable means to do what you're doing with it. So there's a few things that people should be across, but overall they must have an iron in that fire.
Cool, thank you. Alfredo, what's your takeaway?
I think I would take what both of them said and add to it. There's a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Are you aware of that? That's the short version of that is that little knowledge is dangerous, and it means that when people first learn about something or get to use a cool tool that can do something cool, they think that they're the expert in it. They get carried away. They want to sell it. They package it. This is a solution to everybody's problems. And as they learn a little bit more about this, they realize they know nothing and they have a long way to go. And the top of that first peak of confidence, which is what we're seeing right now, is also known as Mount Stupid, which is where you're like, I'm an expert. And it makes, I feel like this saying of in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So for me, the one takeaway would be is listen to what people are saying, have an open mind, but don't feel like you've got to be the first one. And it's okay to ask, what is this solving? Is this even worth it? And I think that would be it. Just be buyer beware. I think one example is Sergio from Emoba, who I've been trying to get onto a podcast forever, and he just keeps avoiding it. I saw him last week, I think it was, and he said to me, I'm not sure I was supposed to be saying this, but he said to me, it's crazy, man. People are handing over API access to their whole systems that they've never met, just because they go, no, I can plug this little thing into your CRM, and they're basically opening up all their data, access to absolutely everything, and they don't even know what they just did. So just Tom, Dick, and Harry that just popped out of the woodwork. So be careful and surround yourself, with a team that can advise you on these things. And then the final thing I would say is, let's be careful not to be my AI is talking to your AI in these sort of things, meaning if your AI guy or person is asking you something and you don't really understand what they're saying, don't use AI to formulate a response to them, because they're going to get back a 48-page document for a spec. They're going to spend 6 weeks putting something together and have a meeting with you, and you have no idea what it is you just asked them for, and they're going to be pretty mad at you that you just wasted 2 weeks of their time preparing this 10 grand a month spec. So just be careful how you use it yourself, I think that would be my advice.
Thank you. There's a lot to take away from that. Based on what you just said, Alfredo, the human element of our business-to-business relationships is as important as our human aspect of our business to client relationships. So that's an interesting one, and I like the idea of using the AI hammer and everything looking like a nail. Jaimie, you also touched on being careful, particularly with the legal aspects. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and handing out API access to the bloke down the street is a scary prospect. And I think, Lorraine, you summarized it beautifully. Stay up to date and be aware of what's going on in AI, but don't give all of your human value up, and stay in the loop, but you don't have to be first. Thank you, each of you. I think that was a really well-rounded episode. I think we talked around the issues well, and we agreed and disagreed, but I think this kind of conversation is the conversation that people aren't having about AI. They're talking about tools and API access and gadgets and gizmos. Next week in episode 3, we're talking about the problems of data. And if you put garbage data in, you'll get garbage data out. AI isn't a magic box. It can't make sense of garbage data. And we're also talking about the problem of AI can't automate a process that doesn't exist. Join us then.